Hello and welcome to The Secret of Water Insights, episode number 3. My goal as an engineer has always been to make research in order to find solutions for practice. So let's jump right into today's topic.
A dry drop from the Dusseldorf water pipe looks like this, and like this when this water has been swirled. An evaporating drop of water leaves a unique image of its dissolved substances under the microscope. Stuttgart artist Huub Kubler discovered these phenomena 15 years ago. This gave many people an insight into what they otherwise call lime stains.
Professor Bernd Kröpplin then picked up this technique and started a project at the University of Stuttgart in Germany. I joined them in this project. He and his collaborators made many interesting discoveries and found some interesting results which really well fit the ones of other great water pioneers.
At the Space Research Institute in Stuttgart, a relatively simple way has been found to make the structure of a drop visible. The drops are applied to a glass and dried. Under the microscope, fascinating images emerge, which are photographed with a special camera. The researchers are rewarded with insights into a beautiful world. Each drop has its own face, distinctive and unique. Why are the individual drops so different? What do the images tell us? Who can interpret them? What information do they contain and where does it come from? Perhaps even from humans? We have person A doing this, we have person B doing this, we have person C doing this. So they made some drops here on this side, they dried and they were all from the same water. And all three drops looked different. We hadn't made any changes yet. The images were different, so the change must have come from the people here. And you can see from the results on the right that the images produced by the individual students were different, but they are quite similar to each other. So from the first experimenter, this one, from the second, this one, from the third, this one, and from the fourth, this one. And they are very reproducible among themselves, but you wouldn't think it was the same water because when you compare these images from different people, you can see big differences. So it must be that information from the experimenter who held the syringe in his hand but did not touch the water at all, was transferred to the water and reproduced in this image.
Let's look at a couple of results they published during this collaboration. Here, the first one, called Apollo 4, according to the institute Professor Kröpplin led at the university. Here you see the two above images are water from a normal outlet coming from the city water supply. And you see that these two images look different depending on who was putting these droplets on the object carrier. Below you see a special water source where they also did the same thing, and you see also these images look different. So you can see that depending on the person doing this work, the images look different, but at the same time, you also see that these two images above are still similar, and the two below, they also are similar and look clearly different to the ones above. So this means if you have here persons doing various droplets of different waters, they look different depending on the person, but horizontally, if you look at the same waters, they still look similar, even though different persons would be doing the work. which is important and interesting. The second project we'll be looking at is the project Apollo 5. And here, these images you see is the water outlet from the Institute. They just took photos of that to the left. So they all look similar, these photos. And to the right, the same water after having been on a magnet during 30 minutes. So they also look similar, the ones to the right, but different to the ones to the left. And you can see that the minerals have been carried further in and not deposited as fast at the border when the evaporation process had begun. One thing is for sure important. The person that does this work needs to be able to be neutral, not carried away by his moods, because this would influence the results. And this also has been clearly stated by big scientists, the observer influencing the results for sure when you look at quantum physics phenomena. Our own work was more engineering-headed, structuring the observations with this method in order to give us useful results for water treatment.
The Swiss developer is one of the few manufacturers of water revitalization devices that are also able to diagnose water quality and its changes.
These images under a microscope may not be sufficiently reproducible for scientists, but for us, they are very good reference points, as we always can obtain similar images for similar problems. And that is important for us in practice, so we know in which direction we need to work. And this picture here is a typical picture of a mountain stream. What we see here is that the lime is carried far inwards, these white dots. This shows that the water is very strong. If we now have a tap water that is under pressure for several kilometers, then this water becomes lame, and it shows a picture like this. We see here that the lime is deposited immediately at the border, and it's not carried far inwards. If we now activate this water, this tap water here, again electromagnetically with harmonic frequencies, then again we have an image that is very similar to the mountain stream from before. Let's look at some of the work we did and what we had modified compared to how the University of Stuttgart has been working. In the first image here, you see that the setup of the microscope and the positioning of the camera, of course, this remained identical. Now, if you look at these two images here, you will see that the posing of the droplets on the object carrier we have modified. We wanted to have less influence of the person applying it, which was very strong when you put every single drop with a syringe. We had this semi-automated unit where you just with a click, without getting too close to the water, we could pose these droplets at the same time. And of course, like that, we would have less influence of the person doing the work. And you see on the second image there that we also were standardizing the conditions during the evaporation process, because when you would have very humid conditions, the evaporating process of the drop would take longer, sometimes much longer. And we saw that this would influence the results, the outcome of the images. So we did standardize this process by making it shorter, by keeping it always in similar dry conditions. We look at where these images came from. You saw in the movie. Here you see a series of images where we did a comparison of the water during its way through a piping system over several kilometers. The first image there, you also know from the movie, it is the spring water, how it looked originally. Already then, when this spring water has been carried through the pipes several kilometers until the water treatment plant, it started depositing the minerals immediately at the borders. It didn't have this energy anymore to carry the minerals. Then there they did several treatments. One of them was lowering the pH, where we know this will allow to dilute more minerals. So the process was improving, carrying the minerals towards the center. It looked a little bit more like the spring water, not quite yet. And then when you had this same water with a chemical treatment, couple of kilometers down the pipe system, it would then lose all this effect again. So we see that this chemical treatment would lose its effect during transport in the pipe systems. And then when you would treat this with a good physical water treatment, you could achieve again a very similar image of the water drop. Again, the minerals carried far into the center. Same image as you saw in the movie again. Yeah, if you look then at the borders of these images, so more close-up image of these water drops, you see there the source water. The minerals are finely distributed and carried inwards. Before water treatment, it has been less effective, this water, in diluting and carrying minerals. It has been improved by this chemical treatment after the water treatment plant, but then again lost this capacity during transport in the pipes, and then again improved after physical water treatment. On these images, you can see the effect of engineering measures of in-stream river training. You see that the drops above and below the pendulum ramp, they look completely different. I want to end this episode by just looking graphically at what is actually happening here in such a water drop. If you look at this first water drop here, you see the water drop is on a glass object which is hydrophilic, so it is well spread out. And these little dots here, the black dots, they should signify the minerals in this water. Of course, the whole thing is still transparent at this moment, and you cannot see these minerals, not even with a really, really good microscope. It's all transparent. Let's look now at the second image here. If you have a water of strong quality, it will carry most of these minerals inwards during the evaporation process, meaning the water will be more and more enriched with dissolved salts, minerals. Some will also, with a really healthy water, be deposited during this process. If you have a less strong water quality, then the water will drop more of these minerals and carry less of the minerals inwards during the evaporation process, and the water will be less enriched with salts and minerals in its diluted state. Here, the third image, finally, when all the water has been evaporated, of course, all the minerals will have been deposited on the glass surface. And now we can take these images and compare these water droplets, for example, same water with various persons. The next video coming out on this channel will be the beginning of a new series. I have the series going on, The Secret of Water Insights, with this one here being the third episode. I've going on Water Frequencies and Health. And now the third series is called Integrated Water Management. Please shut off your Wi-Fi and your mobile phone. Get it away from you as often as possible. For sure at night during sleep, because that's when your cells are regenerating and they are bathing in water. And if you want to have this water influence as little as possible from technical radiation, do that. Take care and have a great day.